Q&A sessions are often a highlight of a ministry event for RZIM. Some of you will find yourselves in exactly that format. Others of you are more likely to be answering questions without a microphone. But nevertheless, the questions asked in these live Q&A settings may very well be the same questions you'll be asked by a close friend, a colleague, or a neighbor. How do you know the best way to respond? How can you keep your answer concise, yet engaging, while also demonstrating compassion and respect for the questioner? Those qualities have characterized Ravi Zacharias' ministry for more than 40 years. In this video, Ravi describes his interaction with two questioners at live events. First, you'll see the footage of his responses to a young Muslim student named Hani, and a more recent exchange with an atheist student named Ethan. Then, Ravi will offer his commentary on the answers he gave to those two students, and give some general advice on how to determine what approach is best in responding to a particular question, or even when dealing with many questions at once. How do you begin? What if you don't know the answer? What if you say something that you later regret? Ravi concludes this 12-week course with great advice on how to face some difficult situations and on how to engage in apologetics with the ultimate aim of introducing the person to Jesus Christ.
Hello, my name is Ethan Kaiser. I am a scientist and an atheist, and my question is, since the Bible has been scientifically disproven as far as all the claims, through evolution, the theory of evolution, archaeology, Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, since we know this didn't happen because of our science nowadays, my question is, how do we have, according to the Bible, how do we have free will if God is this omniscient being that knows everything about us, everything we will do, and he pretty much knows our outcome before we're even created. So he creates us knowing everything we'll do. Since we can't surprise him by our actions, we have no free will. Our choices have been predetermined, and that the act of judgment is completely immoral because he knows what we're going to do. Nothing can surprise him. That's my question.
Thank you for the question. And before you go into an auditorium, if you give a sheet of paper and ask us to write 20 possible questions, that'll come. We've never heard a new one in all of these years that go by. They're pretty much the same questions. It's interesting that you began by saying, as an atheist, all of this has been disproved, and so you live with scientific materialism as your worldview. I studied under John Polkinghorne at Cambridge University. You probably know the name. One of the world's leading quantum physicists who came to exactly the opposite conclusion you did while being the dean at Queen's College, Cambridge, as a quantum physicist, taking the same data you did. So obviously, for a man of his intellectual ability to come to a different conclusion, one would either have to say he's totally stupid to come to that conclusion, or else his empirical basis. Please don't keep shaking your head. Let me finish so that you can come and talk afterwards. So allow us to concentrate what we're saying here. I want to read for you what David Berlinski says about the scientific naturalistic worldview. Do you know who he is? No. One of the world's leading physicists who is an agnostic, borders on atheism, but took issue with Richard Dawkins's book, The God Delusion, and wrote a book called The Devil's Delusion. Here's what he said. Has anyone ever provided proof for God's inexistence? Not even close. Has quantum cosmology explained the emergence of the universe or why it is here? Not even close. Have the sciences explained why our universe seems to be fine-tuned to allow for the existence of life? Not even close. This is Berlinski talking. Are physicists and biologists willing to believe in anything as long as it is not religious thought? Close enough. Has rationalism and moral thought provided us with an understanding of what is good, what is right, and what is moral? Not close enough. Has secularism in the terrible 20th century been a force for good? Not even close to being close. Is there a narrow and oppressive orthodoxy of thought and opinion within the sciences? Close enough. Does anything in the sciences or in their philosophy justify the claim that religious belief is irrational? Not even in the ballpark. Is scientific atheism a frivolous exercise in intellectual contempt? Dead on. Now, I didn't say that, all right? I'm not quoting myself. Please give me your name, sir.
Ethan.
Ethan?
Yes.
Ethan, what you're wrestling with is not uncommon. Many people from a scientific and materialistic worldview will say what you've said and come to that conclusion. The problem is what you mispositioned was your concern between determinism and free will. Your application could have gone in many different directions, but you came to that one for some reason, which I was unfortunate, I think. At Cambridge, I listened to a talk at the Lady Mitchell Hall in 1990 by Stephen Hawking. As you know, he can't speak, he uses a speech synthesizer. His whole talk was on determinism and freedom. And you know what he concluded? That the tragedy with scientific materialism, if we take its assumptions, is that we are not free, we are totally determined. That was the world's leading physicist at that time saying, the very thing you're asking of the Christian faith, he pinned on your backs as scientific materialists. You can go right online and trace it. Lady Mitchell Hall, 1990, somewhere on March, April, May, that time I was in attendance. And he said, the only escape I have is since I don't know what has been determined, I may as well not be. The whole auditorium moaned and groaned with an escape hatch that he gave for himself after telling us that we were completely determined. That's Berlinski's issue. That is actually even what people like Dawkins will concede, or Pinker. You read Steven Pinker and the others. So totally determined. So the question is, were you free to ask this question? Yep.
I don't believe any of us actually have free will because we are strictly material.
So you're actually, as a machine automaton, asking me this question?
We are all made up of our past experiences.
Okay, but you're not free then. You're not free. You're not making a truth statement.
My true statement. I mean, what I'm saying is our memories and our states.
No, hear me carefully.
Okay.
If you're totally determined,
Yes.
you're pre-wired to think the way you do.
Nature versus nurture, yes.
Sorry?
Nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Regardless,
Okay.
the nurture may provide a different environment, but the
Sure.
nature is you're hardwired
Yes.
to come out with a certain conclusion. Out of flux, nothing but flux. You know, what you put into the computer, the ultimately is going to come out. But you have to ask yourself, are you making a truth claim? If you are making a truth claim, you're rising above the bondage of total subjectivity. And the moment you claim a truth claim, you're violating determinism. And so I just leave you with that. And let's meet afterwards. Hey, Ethan, we want to chat with you. You know, you're the kind of guy we come here for. So afterwards, you come here and we'll chat with you. Come here, give me a shake hand. Blessed one. Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
I'm not a Christian, I'm a Muslim, so pardon my questions. The Ten Commandments you talked about certainly provide a very enlightening spiritual guide for people. But as a society, compared to the Mosaic Law, where it has a single law for every single thing you're ever bound to do, I see that really the laws that Jesus came with, the code of life he came up with.
Sorry, code of?
The code of life that he's supposed to have given us is not sufficient to envelop society like Jewish law or Islamic law. How do you think Christianity can fix the world if the absolute law that you demand is not present in Christianity itself? You can't love thy neighbor and love thy father and just bring it on from there.
Okay, good question. And did you say you're not a Christian, but you're a Muslim?
I'm a Muslim, yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that, sir, and thanks for asking. I think it's a wonderful question, and I can see actually why you would even raise it, because when you look at the Islamic code, everything is enjoined, everything is described, from your diet and your fasting and all of that. It is all enshrined and all the way up to the Sharia and the code and the law, etc. Jesus stood in stark distinction to both Islam and in the way the Judaizers were using the law. He never came to destroy the law. He made that very clear. He came to establish it. What he reminded us is that by the keeping of the law, no flesh can be justified. This is a fundamental difference between Islam and Christianity, that in my faith, I can be absolutely certain that I am forgiven, not because I am righteous. For you, it would be purely the will of Allah whether He chooses to grant you that salvation or not. But don't ever forget that what Jesus actually said was transcend the written law in any way. For example, He says, you say, you shall not commit adultery. He said, I'm telling you, if you look upon a woman with lust, you have already committed adultery in your heart. He has already established that now on a higher plane. He says, if you hate somebody, you've already committed murder. If anything, He establishes it on a higher plane than either the Quranic law or the Judaizers would have used. So let me take you to what I think is a classic response to your question. If you take the Sermon on the Mount and see what Jesus said is the characteristic of the child of the kingdom, you've got there inscripted not only what the moral boundaries are, it's not my law, by the way, what the moral boundaries are, but how only by the change of heart and beginning with the poverty of spirit can you come into that relationship and live as a child of the kingdom. For example, when He took the whole story of the Good Samaritan, the person questioning Jesus said, who is my neighbor? Did you notice? Do you remember how Jesus answered that? He basically answered it not by telling him who his neighbor was, but to whom are you being neighborly? He said it again on a higher plane. So I think the difference between, say, what you are raising for me and what the Christian faith would give to you is that the Christian faith is not devoid of a moral law. It sets it on a higher plane and reminds you and me that we cannot keep it in and of ourselves. Jesus described the moral law as a mirror. You can look at a mirror and find out that your face is dirty, but you don't go and rub your face on the mirror to clean it. So you go to something other than the mirror, and the law, says the Apostle Paul, is a schoolmaster. If anybody knew what the moral law was, it was the Apostle Paul. And he found out at the end that it was only the grace of God and the mercy of God that was able to give him salvation. It doesn't deny the law, it affirms it, and shows ultimately the impossibility for you and me to keep it. So it does not destroy the law. It shows that He alone completely fulfilled it. No one else ever did.
Amen.
One more, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jesus spoke in a lot of parables, which in my culture, in my world, because I'm Arab, we're accustomed to that.
Yes,
but
sir.
Parables are too abstract. You can't take that to the bank. Parables are not the law. But all the thing that you just mentioned is the reason why there are 1,001 churches and denominations around.
Okay.
The Christianity is not united, and I think that's why.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, but you're forgetting an awful lot too. There are scores of Islamic sects as well. Scores of them. The first 3 caliphs were murdered, assassinated. Why? 2 of them were by counter-Muslims. So you've got the Seveners and the Twelvers and the Ismailis and the Ahmadiyas and the Shiites and the Sunnis and and on and on and on. So let me finish. So my point to you is, your point is well taken if you understand one thing, that ultimately you and I are not Christians by the denomination or the abomination we belong to. We are Christians by becoming followers of the... what's your name, sir?
My name is Hani.
And I'll be glad after the meeting to stay and talk to you. I saw you here, and I appreciate your questions. This is so interesting, born and raised in India. I used to hear this all the time. This is what I also said. What's the Methodist? What's this? The story was told about a man who said Jesus healed 2 people with mud, of eyesight. With one he used mud, and with the other he didn't use mud. He said, thank God it didn't happen in our day. We'd have 2 denominations, the Muddites and the anti-Muddites. It's true. There are many of these sects. But you know what is so beautiful about that possibility? Unity does not have to be uniformity. What ultimately defines whether you're a Christian or not is not what denomination you belong to, but whether you know Jesus Christ in your heart as well. And that you can come to know too. But thanks very much, and we'll see you after the meeting here. You know, C.S. Lewis had a very brilliant comment once when he said this: nothing is so self-defeating as a question that has not been fully thought through before it has been fully posed. What he meant by that is that a questioner really needs to think through of the assumptions they are making in the question. Because if the assumptions are self-defeating to their counter-argument, then they basically cut themselves down at their own knees. So what I want you to do is, in observing this interaction with Hani, the Muslim at the University of Michigan audience, and with Ethan, the second night after doing the Princeton Open Forum, we were now in a large setting within a church, packed to capacity, and Ethan comes up towards the end to raise his question. Now, Ethan was the naturalist, atheist, materialist. We are nothing more than animals. Hani is sort of the true religious representative, where the code and the moral law and the abiding by those laws and codes is what ultimately gets you into paradise. So one intensely religious, the other intensely anti-religious. Notice the assumptions that they both made. The assumptions that actually Hani made were basically that by the law, you can dictate your life and then attain paradise for them. That's a Muslim fundamental assumption. The irony is that they never really know whether they have kept the law. If you ask an average Muslim, how do you know you're going to be in paradise? His answer or her answer will be predictably in these words: at the end, Insha'Allah, it's the will of Allah, and your good deeds will be weighed against your bad deeds. And if your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, then you enter paradise. If you read the writings of Ayatollah Khomeini, you will see all the way from how you wash your hands, your toilet practices, your food practices, all of their ceremonies from Ramadan to Eid and all of that are meticulously orchestrated for them. It was a way of commanding them into an ordered group of people. Ironically, you know, even the 5 times a day of prayer, if you study Islam, the original injunction was for 50 times a day. And then in that night journey, Muhammad encountered Moses, and Moses interceded and brought it down to 5 times a day. And there are hadiths which will actually tell you, even if you miss one of those rotations, you're in danger of hellfire. Those are all the presuppositions in the mind of a Muslim when he's raising this. So his question to me was really, you know, parables and inexactitudes and all of this. What kind of guideline can you really give a believer? Now, the fascinating thing and the daunting thing is you really have to do your homework to understand where this is coming from. And so if you don't do your homework, you become a ready target for people like this who have done their homework in their religion and think they have done their homework in the Christian faith as well. The standard lines like all these divisions, you know, with denominations and all, they're really not new questions. But then they've got the Sunnis, the Shias, the Sufis, and the Ahmadiyyas, and you go on and on and on, and all that goes on in the division among the ranks. What he was actually trying to say is that inexact laws produce this disparate beliefs. It's really not true. It proves the depravity within the heart of man. If God had given us 2 ways to come to him, we would have wanted 3 ways. If he'd given us 5, we would have wanted 6. So in answering the questioner, A, always be kind, always be gentle. Now, I wish I could tell you that we've always succeeded in that. Sometimes in the intensity of the moment, you sort of lose your way, and when you finish, you're sorry you moved in that direction. Don't get trapped into impulsive, aggravated responses. You really don't win the questioner. You may only win your own emotions at that time, and afterwards you lose even them. So be kind, be gentle, unpack the question, look at the assumptions, and once you've looked at the assumptions, you can see the systemic contradiction within their views. You know, on some occasion, it may just happen where somebody may draw the worst out of you and you may get into a heated, interruptive type discourse where you also end up saying things you wished you hadn't said. That often happens on television talk shows, by the way, and invariably and every now and then can happen when you're talking in an open forum. Here's what I suggest to you. For example, with Ethan, it became quite intense. And so I made it a point of calling him up to the front, extending my hand and shaking hands with him. And then we met privately afterwards and parted in very cordial terms. And that's happened many, many times. Every now and then asking a person's name helps so that you're not just seeing them as an objection, or you're seeing them as a person and you're interacting with them by name. That alone softens the blow. If perchance you're walked away from there and you're spending a sleepless night saying, I blew it, I was angry, I lost it. If it happens while you're on the platform, there's nothing wrong with saying, by the way, to you as an audience and to you, my friend, my apologies for you for coming on the way I did. I'm sorry in the heat of the moment. I just got more passionate than I should have. I give you my apologies and ask your pardon for that. And I hope you and I can stay connected and not allow that little bit of a stray to affect our future correspondence and our connection. And if it doesn't happen on the platform when you think of it, you can always, if you're writing to the person or in connection with the person, or if it's a video that's in the marketplace, we will often put a footnote saying we apologize for the way this came through and we've done our best to make it right with the questioner. A lot of our stuff actually you all watch is unedited. It comes through exactly the way it was done. And so if we go astray in our argument, there's nothing wrong with asking the person's forgiveness and apologizing to them. It's not only the right thing to do, it is the Christian right thing to do, because we owe that person that regret for the way we got strayed. And you know what'll happen? We've all made those mistakes. I remember times when we walked away from an open forum, we are sitting around a table afterwards having a bowl of soup or something at the end of the night, and saying, you know, had I had to do that all over again, I would have done it a little differently. I remember my professor during my graduate days, Norm Geisler, when he came back from a major debate, and I said to him, how did it go, sir? He said, went well. He said, I made a few mistakes. And I said, whoa, in my heart, I didn't know he made mistakes in these debates and so on. No matter how much of a veteran you are, how seasoned you are, oftentimes you will stumble. And if you ever think you're not going to, you're in greater trouble than having to ask the forgiveness or place an apology before a people. Our message is more important than just face-saving is. So do it well, do it with commitment, and where there are missteps, own up to it and make amends for it. So key to this is the difference between law and grace, how you come to the conclusion of grace without destroying the law, but showing that by the law none of us could ultimately be justified and get the message of the gospel through. With Ethan, you saw the hostility and anger, and by the way, he happened to be a wrestler, so you don't want to intimidate a guy like that anyway, for your own well-being. But he and I met privately after it was over. Notice he kept harping on that deterministic attitude, while he himself had no other in Christianity, that if God has hardwired us, well, what was his option? Nature has hardwired us. So he never really escaped the problem he was raising from either of the two worldviews. But once he came to nurture, that's where I think the gospel gives us the opening. You proclaim truth, you give the truth, you show the transforming capacity of the heart, how the message of redemption is so important and the work of God in an individual heart. How easy it is to see depravity demonstrated and at the same time see the need and the hope of the gospel. The most unenviable position to be in is when the person is halfway through their question and you say to yourself, uh-oh, what on earth am I going to say about this? It could be from a geologist, or it could be from a psychological theorist, or somebody who's introducing some extreme idea which you may not even be familiar with, leave alone fully in control of. My suggestion to you at a time like that is never be afraid, whether you're in a private conversation or in a public conversation, to make a comment like this. You know, in the disciplines in which I'm focused, namely philosophy or theology or social theory and so on, I can give to you my answers directly. But the kind of discipline you're engaged in now, for example, if you're engaging as a geologist on the subject, sir, may I say to you, I know good articles in the field and good Christian responses that have been made by people who are experts in your field and your discipline. Will you give me the privilege of at least connecting you with that kind of an authority so that you're on a level playing field in the narrow area that you are raising? For me to even venture forth would be an offense to your intelligence. You're a specialist in this field. I do know there are answers. I do know there are experts because I've seen the annotations of their articles and so on, and you will benefit from it. So don't feel that you pretty much have to be an authority on all of the disciplines that you're going to confront. That will never be there. World religions are so different to the sciences, and some are experts in one and not in the other. But always remember not to leave the person thinking that there is no resource for them on this. There is a resource, and you can say, just meet with me afterwards, talk to one of us. We will not only put you in contact with this person, but send you material in it. But as a simple approach, let me give you an answer that will at least defuse the question, and you can just enter into it. For example, if one is talking about psychological theories and counseling issues and so on, you can say, you know, when you move from the exact sciences to the inexact sciences, you come up with assumptions of what it is that creates personality issues and struggles. You come from one side of a Freud approach to it, or you come from another side where somebody is dealing with this from the point of view of a horrific experience rather than a preconditioned upbringing and so on. Your approaches and answers will be different. May I direct you to a good Christian psychologist here who deals with the subject and will be helpful to you. So don't feel you have to answer it comprehensively, but you can answer it meaningfully and certainly put them in touch with the right authorities who can reach them. Otherwise, you'll be having to live life a few times around before you can answer every specialized discipline, and that's really not an option. How do you get there? Be a good listener. Always be a good listener. And not only listen to what they believe, but don't be afraid to ask why. Because there you will see the reasons for a person's ultimate commitment. Oftentimes the hostility comes from a bad experience with another Christian, or a sad experience in life, or a broken heart, or a shattered dream, or a debilitating disease of some sort that has broken a family, broken a home, and you see somebody suffering. Once you can understand the emotional component and the nurture component in a person's life, you can easily get to the entry point of a discussion. Asking questions compels the other person to open up within their own assumptions, and it determines the entry point of the discussion. Have you noticed how Jesus did it? Good Master, what must I do to attain eternal life? You and I would have immediately given them the answer of how to enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus said to him, why do you call me good? There's none good but God. What is Jesus saying? Are you calling me God? If you're calling me God, are you going to listen to me? If you don't believe I'm God, why are you even asking me this question? And are you implying you can be good apart from God? You see the tension that Jesus built with a simple question to enable the person to see their own heart as God sees it, that we're on the run. See, apologetics is not a weapon. If you see apologetics as a weapon, you'll draw blood. But if you see apologetics as a means to get the heart of the gospel message to them, you will win many a person's respect so that they will read the gospel with an open heart. And hopefully, when the transformation comes, it'll be from God, not because of your argument or mine. So in both Hani and Ethan's case, and this other individual privately, you have to open them up within their own assumptions, see the points of tension, and show how Christ has the answer to that tension, and Christ provides the transformation of the heart in order to come to him and honor the law, not as a means to salvation, but as a love for the one who has given us those moral boundaries. I just pray you will all do apologetics with a tender heart and a committed mind. It's very much needed in our time. Thank you for allowing us at RZIM to have a small share in your life in doing apologetics God's way.